of absence. I've one from Barbara, I believe.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything from Gemma?
I haven't heard an apology, she was messaging her yesterday.
Okay.
Saw her on the street while trying this afternoon.
Item 2, disclosure of interests. Reclaim.
Yep. Probably.
Any other disclosure of interest? Item 3, public participation. Members of the public may ask questions and make representations relating to items on the agenda in accordance with standing orders. Yes.
I'm here to make a statement in response to the consultee comments for the application for change of use at the plant house.
Yes.
We were highly disappointed to see the statement submitted by the Parish Council regarding our current application for change of use to our annex into a holiday let. The statement contained bold accusations of breaches in planning, saying that our annex was converted from a non-residential stable and the council does not recall any planning application for this change from non-residential to residential use. This is totally inaccurate, and I would like to draw the council's attention to the full planning document reference number A/2002/0562 dated the 10th of October 2002, which says that our annex has always been entitled for use for any purpose by the main house. The annex itself was previously used as a service studio for Felton by the previous owners. At no point has this annex been a non-residential stable as you've claimed in your statement to NCC. Only at the point where this annex was to be used for business purposes was the need for the further permissions to be granted. We would like to know which member of the Parish Council carried out planning history searches on our property. The statement submitted by the Parish Council also contained inaccuracies and mistruths, which we believe to be included so as to purposefully hinder and delay our application. For example, referring to shared access through the archway, which in fact doesn't exist. This access is neither shared access or shared ownership and is solely ours. There is an easement for maintenance and repairs to the rear of their property, and we allow our neighbours to put their bins out through the archway for ease. At this stage, I would like to highlight that there are currently 8 properties being used for holiday lets in Felton and West Thurston, none of whom seem to have specific planning for the purpose. 2 councillors in the Parish Council actually live next door to one of these properties. At least 4 of the properties in Felton use parking along Main Street as their main advertised parking means. If one of the concerns the Parish Council have is about the possibility of an additional vehicle putting a strain on the on-street parking, then I think it is only fair to consider the impact that other businesses also place on this already, without restriction and without the need to provide an alternative as we have had to. We have tried to follow the proper means by which to run our annex as a holiday let, i.e. pay tax where it is due and business rates for the area which the business will use. As you may be aware, we own and run businesses and understand the need to have our businesses registered properly. We feel that this effort has not been recognised by the people who are meant to be looking out for and supporting the community which it serves. We are asking for material change of use and not for a planning redevelopment. As the Council know, we have just recently managed to come to a resolution with the Parish Council over our access from Recreation Lane to our small holding after a lengthy and costly process. This dispute also stemmed from inaccuracies and false facts which were presented by the Parish Council as the truth. During this process, it came to light that the Council were actually aware that these inaccuracies were in fact false, yet they proceeded to feign ignorance and claim that we were in the wrong when in fact this is not the case. We are shocked and appalled to find a similar scenario taking place as we seek to provide a service to our village which brings with it huge benefits to the community. I would urge the Council, therefore, to think carefully about retracting or amending their statements in light of this information and evidence already submitted to NCC highlighting where the inaccuracies lie. The Parish Council are a consultee and should only comment on material fact and are not there to offer conditions to planning applications. As a consultee to our application, your statement is presumed fact, and making an inaccurate statement of fact is neither helpful or appropriate. If you do not rectify this, then we see no alternative than to defend ourselves legally again.
Thank you very much. It's not on the agenda, so we can't discuss that as a council, but what will happen is, with that new information we've got now, I'll instruct the clerk to send the email out again with the application on, and we'll take comments again. Are we able to then amend our...
Well, I can ask them to that after the Parish Council.
So there will be, you can't speak on the
I can't because there isn't a resolution.
Okay.
If the Parish Council have taken enough time to consult over this, and if it's not rectified before the 5th of November, which is Friday, it's pointless putting it back to a reconsider. What we would like you to do is get in touch with Northumberland County Council and tell them that the statement that you've made is inaccurate. And if you can't do that before Friday, then
Okay. So the email will go out.
Chair.
We can't discuss this, I'm afraid. We can't discuss it as a thing. It's not on the agenda.
right, we can discuss this because a member of the public has raised a concern, and when other members of the public do that, you do briefly discuss it.
Okay.
Chair, I'm not aware, I'm not disputing, but I know that more than one councillor, I didn't do it personally, but I know more than one councillor researched the county council website. And there was nothing on the county council website which stated there had been an application to convert the building from a stable food store to living accommodation. Now, that's as far as I can go, and I know that was happening in fact. So I think if a member of the public wants something done, they've got to produce the evidence of the application and when it was passed.
Chair, we have, obviously before our time in 2002, it's quite clear on a planning search that the studio annex gets its grant permission then, and I've also sent yourself and Claire a document to prove that.
Yes.
So to be
I was going to get Claire to send that back.
to be helpful, could you say that that document is in place now?
Chair,
Sorry.
I searched the planning documents because I'm very interested in planning documents, and I submitted my view, which was that there should be no objection to your application by the Parish Council. I didn't see there were any grounds for it. I had read some of other people's comments.
Chair, the studio annex was not for residential annex. It was a studio annex for the people who were there, I believe, to use it as a studio for painting, etc.
What there was, though, there was an application that went in to say they wanted to make it an annex to the house, and that was granted, and it said it didn't need planning permission to change use to an annex to the house. Now,
But it wasn't an
I
annex
don't
to
know
the
whether that
house.
didn't show up, but that was signed off, and we'll make sure that goes out with the letter to people. So there was information that shows that an application was put in. Now, I don't know why that didn't show up in the search. That will go out. So all we can do is we'll send that email out tonight. So can I ask councillors to respond to that by Wednesday evening, please? Councillors respond to that by Wednesday evening, so that Claire can then get in touch with them by Thursday to make an amendment. Yeah, casual.
Just one final point. This was a very difficult email to write, and as you can tell by the tone of Rosie's voice, it was a very difficult letter to read. The Parish Council is an authority, And when the parish council say anything, it is presumed factually correct. The problem with the parking is a highways issue, which if you have read our plan application, highways have already mentioned it, and there is in the plan an idea of a solution for parking if we should need it, albeit it would be the only business in Felton that did have a parking sanction, but again that's highways, not parish council. If you make a statement about anything that's not factually incorrect, it has a massive impact on people's lives. And me and Rosie have been down this road already with you before, and all we are trying to do is re-register that building for business use. If we could Airbnb it, and Airbnb the house, but all we're trying to do is pay our taxes properly.
We'll send that letter out.
Okay.
I'll try and get everything done by Wednesday, so on Thursday.
John, I'll update you on this.
Okay.
I hope that's okay for you. That's, it's not on the agenda, like I say, we can't take a vote on it or anything like that. So that's our plan to try and get it done.
But, Chair, we are not an authority.
No, but we are
It is, as
consulting.
Councillor Cruton just said, we are an authority for planning. We are not an authority for planning. We can only comment on planning, and the authority is Northumberland County Council. Full stop.
Okay, yes, I take it back.
Thank you. Well, we've come to the decision on that, or not decision, we've come to the agreement on what we're going to do. We'll move on. Is there any other comments? Yes.
Item 6 on the agenda, the Felton Cemetery. What's the background to this item that's being proposed for the dissolving the Felton Joint Cemetery Committee? Also, how much extra per year will this proposal cost Felton residents? And who owns the cemetery? And are there discussions to prove this to prove the ownership at NCC and Woodhall Archive?
Okay, you'll hopefully we'll cover that at item 6. You'll see itself that this is only to get the clerk to look at it. We'll discuss. I think most of those points you'll see at item 6. We'll cover the points you want. I hope to. Thank you. Any other points? Thank you. Item 4. Minutes of the previous meeting. 4A. We can't approve those ones because the statement, if you remember, there was a statement made by a member of the public to correct the previous set of minutes. It was agreed that statement would be verbatim. It isn't verbatim, so we need to rewrite those minutes with that statement verbatim. So item 4A will be delayed until next month. Item 4B, though, to approve and correct as a correct record the minutes of the meeting that we cancelled the extraordinary meeting on the 14th of October, pages 7 and 8, if you remember correctly. Does anybody have any comments on those minutes?
Not there.
They are.
They're on my page.
Oh, very good. No comments? Okay. Can I have a show of hands that we accept that as a true record of all the minutes? All those in favour? Thank you very much. Any against? Thank you. Item 5, General Power of Competence. I think you'll enjoy me congratulating Claire on passing her Silker course. Because she has now passed that, we should meet the eligibility of
Not tonight.
that means we can adopt the General Powers of Competence. For that, we need to have at least 2/3 of elected members, or we've got a full council, so we need that one. And that the clerk holds the certificate of local council administration in Silker, which Claire now does. So can I have an agreement that we meet those powers and as a council we adopt the General Powers of Competence? Gives us some more time. Do you want to discuss that first, or you have to go to a vote?
Does it change anything?
Gives us.
Yes, so the general power of competence gives the council the power to do anything an individual can without having to look for a specific power. It doesn't allow you to circumvent any restrictions on power. So if there's a particular set of hoops to jump through, you still would have to do that. But it's power of first resort, so that it simplifies matters.
Whenever we pass a resolution of power amendment, what should happen is The clerk should say this is passed in accordance with this,
I do
this
check.
power. Yes, so it's, you know, so it quotes the power that's passed over, we don't have to do it to the general court. So just, we meet the criteria, so why not? So all those in favour of...
Chair,
Yeah, sorry?
just, I'll deal with Councillor Southern's queries. It is recommended with all parish councils to retain this.
Yes.
For the simple reason, it's, you're more likely to get access to grants, etc., if you have this power of competence. Because if you haven't got that power of competence, you sometimes can't get grants, which would normally be available to parish councils.
Thank you very much. So all those in favour of the Parish Council adopting the General Powers of Competence? Anybody against? Thank you very much. Item 6, Felton Cemetery. To consider dissolving the Felton Cemetery Committee and to instruct the clerk to prepare a report and please close procedure. The reason behind this is when the clerk was doing the silver course, she came across some of the other councils that have joint cemetery committees, and they were effectively dissolving the joint cemetery committee and having a single parish council in charge of that cemetery. This would make Felton's life a lot easier. It doesn't make a huge difference to the other two, the Thurston and Swarland, purely on the accounting side. However, as it's been pointed out, we need to check when the council was handed over, when the cemetery was handed over, who was it handed over to? Was it handed over solely to Felton and we've done a joint parish council? Was it handed over to all three parish councils? And we need to assess the cost implication because it is probably our second most expensive budget item, and if we incur all the costs, that's going to be a huge increase to Felton Thurston. Just after that, I had an informal word with Thurston and Swarland on this subject. They agreed that they would continue to contribute, but you know, there's nothing we need. That's obviously all the right thing to read. All this is to let the clerk prepare a report to see whether it is feasible, whether we can do it, and what the cost implications are involved with the council. So I don't think it's actually a resolution, so it's just happy to let the clerk at least produce a report.
If it's a blank, if it's a blank, no, I won't. If you see what I mean.
Yes.
But it was, it came out of a discussion with the local branch of the Society for Local Council Clerks. It was already something I had pondered myself, and hearing a few other committees going through it was quite interesting, and I just thought it would be worth exploring.
Chair, the only thing that concerns me about it is if, under the present terms, if the councils aren't contributing, I mean, fair enough, they won't contribute, they do, but if they're not contributing, then they have to pay double fees.
Yes.
And they know that.
They know that as well. They're fully that.
But I know a few years ago, Newton and Swarland looked at it primarily for the Newton Award. But when we looked into the records and saw how many reserved spaces they had in the cemetery, and we multiplied them by double fees at the time, it was going to, their contribution was minimal, but the residents were going to be hit hard financially.
Yes.
So they said, oh no, we'll keep paying.
That's why they wanted to keep paying when I informally said all it was looking at to make it, just makes it easier for our accounting side.
Well, I know it's saving you the apportionment.
And for the meeting.
And just at meeting, we would just be able to, we would run it, and then we would almost charge them a fee to qualify for double cemeteries.
Well, just based on what we've got now. Possibly.
But all it is are people happy that the clerk produces a report? Because
Well,
look at this in principle,
We're not in principle, yes.
Yes. I mean, it doesn't hurt to have a look at it.
No, No harm at all.
But I'd like to say my concern is what the cost implication might be to Felton Parish Council.
Well, this is what concerns me.
Yes. But I think it could potentially force our costs up drastically, and I don't want that.
Well, that's the big concern.
Yes. But hopefully this will make that clear.
But I mean,
And it may just, when she produces the report, it's obvious it's a no, but at least we'll have a look and we can see.
well, when Northumberland became unitary, we all had the chance, the parish councils, to hand over the cemeteries to the county council. And at the time, ours wasn't costing us anything, which is a minimal cost from the three parish councils. And so consequently, we retained it. But since then, the wooden burial is established. And obviously, with the pandemic, cremations have grown tremendously. And this is where we, as a parish, have lost, or as a burial board, burial committee, have lost quite a bit of money. It's one of those things.
Yes.
I mean, if you look at the averages, it's just like that, and then all of a sudden you have a dip.
Yeah,
And then the next year, you'll be way over height,
yeah, we've seen that.
and it just, I don't know what the answer is.
Do you vote on that, or do we have
I don't, it's not, quick show of hands.
Quick show of hands, happy for you to produce a report, please.
Yeah.
7A, finances. To receive the financial statements and budget and monitoring documents from the 19th of October to authorise payments. I mean, you said the only thing I noticed is the income from the cemeteries down, and I presume that's because we've not had many burials.
We haven't had to
The same for the income from the parishes, that seems to be down the way.
Oh, yeah, because I do the bills around this time of year.
So they've not been sent out.
Chair, £144 seems a big fee for one employee, or is it two employees?
That's item C, that's coming next. Or
Oh, sorry.
It should be B, we're on A.
Sorry.
Missed it.
Sorry.
So we're just looking at. Does anybody have any comments on the financial statement and the payments? So can I show of hands that you're happy to authorise those payments as listed then? All those in favour? Thank you very much. Right, should be B, but it's mislabelled as C. I missed that, sorry. To approve other expenditures. The Finance Committee recommends that payroll is outsourced. So at the moment, what happens is that every month Claire logs on and does the payrolls for the cemetery groundsman, the cemetery clerk, and
Cemetery clerk doesn't get paid anymore.
Only once a year, but the just two of them, yeah.
so cemetery groundsman, and who else was the one?
Me and,
And with yourself, which requires logging on, making sure it's all correct. And it takes time. So she's found a company that will, she just has to provide the information and they will do all the stuff for HMRC, make sure we're paying the correct tax, income tax, anything like that. We'll do it for us. For £144 for the year, for 3 employees, and they'll add or take off other employees.
they do come highly recommended by other clerks. I asked, there's a lot of recommendations from on some of the forums I'm on, and we did get some extra quotes, and this seemed to be the most reasonable.
Which is around about £12 a month, which is almost an hour of clerk's time, which is almost what it's costing, so it's almost cost neutral. The only thing I would say is that we as a council are still responsible, even if they put something into an HMRC that's wrong. It's still our responsibility to make sure it's correct. We may have a recourse of action to take against the company, but it's still our overall responsibility. So are we actually saying anything in the long run? Yes.
Which is also true with Claire makes a mistake.
Sorry?
So
It's also
yes.
true with Claire makes a mistake, and I think that was part of the thinking, that if it's a company that does nothing but payroll management, then they should make fewer mistakes
Yes.
than somebody who's doing it as an amateur.
Yes.
My limited experience of accounting companies, this fee is incredibly small. Are we absolutely sure that there won't be any little sting in the tail add-ons at any point?
I think so, yeah. She gets really good recommendations, as I say, and a lot of it, that's why I asked her for a quote, because she got good reviews from fellow clerks, and they all said she was very reasonable.
Has this finance committee seen these reviews?
Yes,
Yeah.
That's right.
and the other quotes were 100 to 300. Yeah, compared to this one. And what she was offering and the way she came across seemed very good.
They actually just do payroll, they're not accountants.
Yeah.
So I agree, accountants tend to charge a lot of money to do anything, whereas this is a separate sort of business.
Specialised.
Yeah.
So will that reduce Claire's hours?
No,
No.
by what? Not
Give her
by-
an extra hour a month.
Yeah.
To do on other things, hopefully, so potentially.
That's the plan.
That's the plan, yes.
Thing is, Chip, the only thing I've got about it is Claire's still got to collect information to send them.
She has.
So if she's collecting information, why not just do the whole job?
And we did go backwards and forwards on this, but I think that the finance committee felt that it was good to have that separation. It's good to have someone else taking the accountability. Obviously, it's provided that, as Greg said, we're ultimately responsible as a council, and that's why we're recommending it.
So does anybody have any other points or questions? Okay, so it's the,
Is this for next year, is it?
yes, so it'll be from next year, is it?
Well, we can't start as soon as we want. That's a decision to take, I suppose.
Okay. So can we, let's just check this. Okay, so what I'll do is, first of all, are we as a parish council happy that we take on this DM payroll services to do the payrolls? All those in favour, say some aye. Okay,
Are we allowed to do the members of
Oh,
the finance committee?
Yeah.
We're still councillors.
so the second part of that then, are we happy that it takes effect immediately, or do we want to wait till the next financial year?
I think we should start the next financial year.
Well, I'd vote for immediately or as soon as possible.
There isn't actually it's called real-time information. I haven't sent, yeah, and you having a third party do it for you, as long as she's got all the information. It's just I don't want to undermine someone's job, but it's like an administration thing. So it's clicks on a button. So getting somebody to do it now or getting somebody to do it next financial year shouldn't really matter, because you delegate the job on your own HMRC.
No, what I'm looking at is, John, is it's an annual cost.
Mm.
So how do you split the annual cost? It's only more problems for Claire.
I
So
see.
that annual year go
I
up.
assume she'll just invoice us at an appropriate point and we'll pay the invoice.
I thought it was maybe you pay £144 fee and that's it.
I don't know how she invoices. I don't know whether she invoices that monthly.
I think that should be investigated before we decide.
Okay then. Can we, if Claire gets that information by email and it's a, does it matter? Does it matter? I mean, if it is £144 now, does it
The
matter?
principal is joining it, is using the company.
Yes. So what is the issue with the paying £144 now? Can I ask?
Well, I'm just saying for the accounts.
Yes.
Because there's still 6 months to go, isn't there? About 6 months.
5 months.
But it will just come onto it will come to this year's accounts. We paid 144.
And then next
Or
year.
72.
Yeah, well, it
6
makes
months.
sense, but even if it's 144,
Doesn't
it
matter.
doesn't matter, does it?
Next year.
Next year it'll just get paid.
Put it on the precept.
So all those in favour of it starting immediately? Anybody against? Just one abstaining?
Yeah, I just think January the 1st would be a decent point for payment.
Okay. Well, we've approved it to start. Thank you very much. What is 7D on here? To approve expenditure and authorise the clerk to agree fees for work up to an agreed limit. The Recreation Field Committee recommends that DJR Blewett is engaged to carry out drainage works in the southeast corner recreation field to include installation of an inspection chamber for an estimated cost of £500 plus a VAT of £100.
I've actually got an exact cost, they've given me the quote through today. So they're quoting 3 different figures. 450, which is for one team doing a day's work, which will be the digging down and because they're going to have to clear back the blackthorn in that corner to get to where they need to be. They're going to charge us £120 to put the inspection chamber in, so that's £570. And then once they've done that work, there is an additional optional charge for jet clearing of the drains, which would be £300. So they've given us sort of an estimated cost for the next stage. Let John talk about it.
Can I just, for those that aren't aware, John does actually have some expertise in this area, and I believe you're doing a land management course at the moment.
Yes.
So he does sort of say
Very,
yes.
very slowly, but yes, I do. Peter Blue and I had the cameras up the end of the drain. We've got a video of it. And if anyone would like to see the video, it's here. What he found was we're working back up the pipe here, so not very far into the pipe he found a blockage and a problem. And he's also found like a manifold where 3 of the field drain pipes join, and that is right underneath that perilous blackthorn. So it actually isn't going to damage the field if the work was to be carried out now. You can put a new, what do you call it? You know, the
Inspection chamber.
Even an inspection chamber, but it's also, which also acts as the chamber acts as the manifold for the 3 drains that are there. You can then jet it if you deem it necessary, although Blewett's sort of said that jetting the pipe would probably do more harm than good. So he suggested it's a straight line from this point. So if the Parish Council invest in some pipe cleaner brushes and doing it ourselves would be able to do from there. Now, he said basically one of the problems is that there's like a basin forming in the field, and if you stand where the blackthorn is, you can see where the problem area is slightly lower, so the water isn't going to drain down there. So it will, getting this work done will lead into other work, but what it's going to do is give you the insight as to what's actually wrong. So if you go down there, and the camera can tell you how deep it is, and you know, and obviously you see what's on the screen. If you find that the pipe is lower than the manifold is, then the water's not going to run. And so then you go in with the digger again and put an offshot drainage pipe. So what we're kind of wanting done now is almost exploratory work. It may fix the issue, but I think it's probably going to lead into more work. But it's certainly a really good start.
And I would say, just add to say, although we have at various points had quotes from various companies, we haven't gone with this exact work to another company, but this is because this has been going on for several years. We have tried very unsuccessfully to get exact quotes for what we want doing. This seems to have been the best proposal that has been put forward as to how to deal with this issue, which is why we're recommending it for that.
See, Chair, when that field was created, where the problem was a big slack area. By slack, I mean a deep slope. Now, when the field was leveled out to what it is now, the Parish Council was told it hadn't to be drained for 10 years. So allow the whole ground to settle, hoping to stop that dip you're talking about. But obviously, I know it was left out 12 or 14 years before it was drained, and it was done. And it was done with plastic pipes.
Yeah.
And they thought it wouldn't dip, as they thought the old tile pipes would dip, whereas the plastic they thought wouldn't dip, but obviously the plastic has dipped. So
I think
it's one of these things.
does anybody have? It looks like the day's work and the inspection chamber are essential. We really need to get
How big will the inspection chamber be?
It's based on a normal field drain sort of manifold size. And I don't have the measurement right in front of me, but it's about this high. But it's off the field. It's in the brash area. Do you know the blackthorn is right in the southeast? It's in there. So it actually wouldn't be a trip hazard, wouldn't be,
No.
in fact, a member of the public probably wouldn't see it.
So it's probably just above where the outlet is.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, it's 30 metres from the outlet. 30 feet. 30 feet from the
I
outlet.
was going to say, it's not
Sorry,
very
yeah.
good.
And as it goes off up the field, there's a good flow of water coming out from the south side,
Oh,
and there's a good flow coming across from the park. But this bottom area here, you can see the silt build up, and you can see the water sitting in the pipe. And Peter was reluctant to get the camera over the silt in case he got stuck. But he's fairly sure that what will lead into this is the pipe has gone down below the level, and then the sort of,
it's a possibility, yes.
but that's when you'd only have to put a short section of drainage pipe in from there into the ditch.
You hope.
One would hope.
I
No.
think what we can say is this has been going on a long time, so it's worth.
Oh, it's been done.
So
30 years at least.
are we happy to approve this expenditure then for the first two items, the day's work and the inspection chamber? We'll hold off on the jet blasting again because of your recommendation it may do more harm than good. On the first two items.
Whatever's necessary to get the inspection chamber in, because
Yes.
the situation is only getting worse and worse every year, and we're not achieving anything so far.
So can I get Claire to repeat what you said?
So it's £450 for one team working for a day, and then an additional £120 for the inspection chamber, so that's 570.
So what exactly are they going to do on that first day for the
I
phone?
think it's all in the same cost, but they're talking about they have to clear the blackthorn and dig down and clear.
Oh, they're going to clear the black.
They're going to
Yeah.
do all of that.
Oh, fair enough.
So the work idea is to send 2 men and a mini digger down to the site, clear the blackthorn, dig the drain up, put the new inspection chamber in, and then make the site right again. Landscape it and then clear off.
Because I mean, there's about, there should be records and Claire's in the old records that a plan of the drains, which I know was procured from the contractor when they were put in.
And we've got it, but it hasn't helped with, it shows all of the diagonal lines, but further than that, it
The
doesn't.
lateral work, yes.
Any other points? Yes.
I think we should be prepared for 2 days' work. Prepared to accept 2 days' work.
So you're saying that you would you're proposing that they would authorise £900 for the work plus the £120 in
Hang on.
advance.
Yeah, I'm estimating they think they can do it all in a day.
They've said it, but if necessary, what happens to get to the end of the day and they're not finished?
Well, if they made a contract to do it a day, surely they should continue
No,
until.
they've not made it a contract for
They've
one day,
chopped.
doing it a day, they're just saying our day rate is.
I was going to suggest before Lindsay spoke that we say give a figure up to a certain amount, because however good their estimating is, you don't want them stopping in the middle and having to come back to council to increase the sum of money.
The price that,
So,
sorry for interrupting, the price that they've put in is to do the job.
all right.
And if it takes them 1 day or 10 weeks, that's the price that's agreed.
Okay.
And if they find coal as they're digging the hole, you can't rule out any sort of daft eventuality like the digger breaking down or the padlock being stuck on the gate or something like that. And if things change, then I think all we're agreeing to is getting the work done and paying the bill and let them get on with it as soon as we can.
Jeff, did you have anything?
I was just going to say, was it an estimate, was it a quote that they've given?
Both. The quote was the bigger one.
I think we need to remember that they also did the
They've called it a
video.
quotation.
Yeah, so I would trust in that, the work's going to get done for that money unless there's some extraordinary, complicating factor in with it.
They also put the camera in for free.
Are they removing the blackthorn as well?
They are, and I was going to have a chat with you about that because there's a machine there that can remove the blackthorn with minimal damage to the blackthorn. So if it was useful elsewhere, then it could be moved, and I
Plant it up somewhere.
can plant it up somewhere else if we think it's necessary. Because it is actually quite a substantial bush. And then the question is, do you just want the area where they're working cleared, or do you want the whole bit of Blackthorn cleared because there's a bigger bit?
Personally, Chair, I would say get rid of the whole area of Blackthorn, for the simple reason it's just going to be a problem for years to come.
Well, when we did our walk around on the wreck, we sort of noticed that the Blackthorn was self-seeding and moving.
Well, yes.
I'm not a fan of wiping out mature bushes and things like this, but if it was able to be saved or moved, then I would be keen to have a go, if that was all right.
The proposed contract for the works around the wreck is to take that Blackthorn back.
Right.
So it's happening anyway, so I'd say we just.
I mean, I've seen it in my short time in the village, I've seen it.
Or it's come in a metre or two, yes.
Yes.
So I can also say, if they get rid of that Blackthorn completely, it will come back regardless.
It's
So
going
it's,
back there.
it's pretty hard stuff.
Harvey.
It
So
is.
as it's a quotation then,
Yeah.
are we agreed to approve the expenditure and to authorise the clerk to agree the fees for this work? So all those in favour? Thank you. Anybody against? Thank you very much. E then, to approve the expenditure, authorise the clerk to agree fees for the work agreed. The Recreation Field Committee recommends that an initial professional inspection is carried out of trees in the field. Felton Cemetery Joint Committee has requested that trees at the cemetery are included in this inspection. The clerk has obtained 2 quotes and is awaiting the third. Details of the quotes will be provided at the meeting. So over to the clerk.
Yeah, so we've, this came out of obviously there's a need to inspect, to keep an eye on trees and to be risk assessing, to check that they aren't hazard or a danger to the public. I've been backwards and forwards with a couple of tree companies, 3 of which have provided quotes for me. They're all sort of suggesting slightly different approaches. I had a really helpful chat with Brent Nichol, who's got EGS services on Main Street. He is suggesting that he says really what you need to do is approach it as have a walk. He would do free of charge a walk around with us and identify the trees that he thinks then need to go on to have a more detailed survey taken. He said that starting off from a point of view of wanting to survey all of the trees is excessive and it would cost too much, and really you'd be surveying trees that aren't necessary. He is happy to lend us his expertise for that inspection on the understanding that then we would, if the surveys were required for some trees, that we would then ask him to complete the surveys. I do think that although that is therefore it's difficult because until he has done this initial inspection, we don't know how many trees would be surveyed and what the kind of cost of that would be. But the advantages of that approach, I consider that, he is local and he is prepared to do that inspection work free of charge to start with. And if there were then, once that relationship's in place, if there were then further, a storm or something that necessitated further inspections, he would presumably be willing to come and do further inspections and keep, have a good working relationship. The other 2 quotes were for doing effectively an initial inspection and producing a plan, which I think is really what Brent would do. Brent would come up with a list of trees that needed surveying, give us advice. They were going to do this, so if they are sort of advising the same work, but they're talking about doing that as a paid service, so they would do an inspection of all of the areas which would be round rec fields, the play area. I did say that potentially the trees down to the riverbank would need to be done because that would include, because we know that the public do access that area even though there aren't footpaths going through it, and riverside. And they came in, it is quite expensive, so one company was saying £500 for all of that, and then the other company was saying £875. It's a little bit difficult to compare the quotes exactly because they are all sort of advising a slightly different approach. But given those high costs just for that inspection stage, I would then say that the route through EGS services seems to me the most cost effective. It's just the fact that...
Does Brent have arborist qualifications?
He does.
Yeah.
She does, yeah.
Because then he could then, what he was saying is so he would do the inspection and then he would survey the trees that were necessary and give us advice on those trees, and he says it probably won't be very many, and he could then advise on tree surgery works and carry those out. So it's sort of, it's leading to something, and I'm sure some of these other companies could as well. So it's difficult because we're not really comparing like with like, and I don't, you know, if we need to go back and get further information, that's fine, just.
Where are the other two firms located?
Sorry, can I just?
Sorry.
Can I suggest that, whoever we give the contract to, that we do actually see the certification that they are able to survey the trees and do the work. Because it has arisen in the past that someone was going to do something with the tree, did something with a tree, and it turned out they weren't qualified to do it. So I think we need to see their qualifications before we award any work.
Okay.
You can ask where they came from, won't you?
Yes.
One of the, I don't know from her email actually where she's based, but she's, one of the first company was the one that was proposing £500 is the company that the school used.
Who?
The school uses,
Oh,
that's where
right.
we recommended them from. And the other one was one of the many people I found via the internet, and I'm just going to see if I can see where their address is. Stallington.
I was going to say there's a firm in Alnwick. I can't remember what they're called, but I've heard them highly recommended by a lot of people. That any work they've done and surveys has been very reasonable, very accurate, and you know, apparently the gear they have is absolutely second to none from what I've heard. But I can find out the name and give it to you, Claire, if you want it.
Can do.
Does that mean we need to wait till?
I don't know, it depends I don't know how you want to proceed, I don't know whether we need more information to make a decision. I was sort of a bit, I had expected just to get another quote in. Yeah, the EGS one was the third one I was awaiting, and then obviously had a conversation with him where he was saying actually wasn't in charge at this stage, for this stage of the work, so that's what's.
Can I read a little snippet off their own website, which obviously we'll have to check, but it said, our arborists, tree surgeons, are NPTC qualified, either academically or personally trained in or both. Trained in both. Therefore, you can be certain that the tree surgery will be carried out to the highest possible standard.
Who is that from?
EGS.
I still think we need to see the qualifications.
My parents have used them and rate them highly, especially compared to the cowboys they had previously, so.
This was a recommendation initially from the Recreation Field Committee.
Yeah.
Was it because there's an urgent need, or was it precautionary on the basis that we had a problem with a tree over the playground last year or the year before? I mean, are there trees that look as though they're about to fall down on
No,
them?
I'm not sure why. It shouldn't in fact have been a rec field, gone through the rec field committee, because the boundaries are the parish council responsibility.
But the thing is, are the trees Felton belong to the recreation field, or are the trees on the other side of the fence?
So as far as the play park is concerned, they're the other side of the fence.
That's what I mean.
But I think there are some, it's around the edges of the field particularly, and there are, yeah.
There's no trees down the river bank as far as I know. It's all bushes and scrub.
I think the means riverside, I think the means riverside as well, and the river.
I know there is some trees down the western edge, I'll admit that, but whether they're ours, the parish council, or whether they're the landowners,
Sure.
Right, so.
I'm not sure.
Yes.
The point of my question was, is there an urgent need, or have we got time to
There isn't an urgent need.
link it to?
There isn't an urgent
link it to-
need, but obviously there's been some, tragic news stories recently about children being, there was a child killed, I think, wasn't there, under a tree, which was caused by a tree, and it has pushed the need to take a risk assessment. I don't know whether this has, at what point the trees have been assessed before, even visually by one of the councillors or certainly not by myself. So it's more about taking that box on our risk assessment, because we can't be seen to, I think we would be put under scrutiny if something did happen.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
No, that's fair.
It seems to me we need further information about what exactly we should be doing and with what skill set.
Well, the answer there is to go to the tree office at the county council.
Yeah,
If
he's
you
very
like,
good.
John already has, if you want.
So I spoke to Barry Wilson at length about that tree that fell on the riverside bank, and he said that the county council had it high on the priority list to deal with ash dieback, and
Oh, yes.
and public safety comes first and foremost. He did say, he did say that he was going to send some information over. Has that happened yet? Because we could chase him back, because the council got quite a lot of information as to what we should be doing. But they did say that while he would recommend using an arborist, that what they need is a report. So whether we do pay for somebody to come and do it, or have a walk around with Brent and we compile a report, we could then give it back to Barry to assess. Barry says he doesn't have the time to come and do the job himself, but he can assess any findings that we have towards the need and speed of doing any work.
Well, he's
Sorry,
good at that.
Yes.
I suggest we inquire about insurers, because there is a problem. That is where we would have to deal with. Our insurers, I'm sure, would tell us what skill sets an inspector would need, whether it's just common sense eyeball or somebody with a long bit of paper.
Barry Wilson said that it didn't necessarily have to be anything other than an eyeball, but you would need something to say it was an annual inspection or a 6-month inspection. You need something to reference it from. So you would say try and get as much information as possible, so you can monitor things. There may not be anything that needs doing right now, but after a heavy storm or after a rough winter, it may do. And he did say that a competent person would be able to make a study on it, and then continue to raise any flags if there was a hanging branch or something.
He did that for us with quite a lot of trees, and recommended that we had a proper arboricultural survey done. So, I mean, he obviously had a bit more time then, but he was extremely helpful and gave us a lot of information about the trees that we would never have guessed.
And I suggest that we get a lot more information before we make any
I think that sounds like it at the moment.
Just make a comment that there is a dead tree beside the War Memorial down at Riverside,
Yes.
on the where the backbone entrance enters there, and there's other ash dieback ones there. It's like Barry Wilson said, and I think some of the trees on the rec field, which are on the rec field at the eastern end, are ash. There's about 5 ash trees there, so they had signs of ash dieback last year.
I think we really want some bit more information. Is the clerk happy you've got enough, or do you need to know?
I don't know what.
Okay, what information do we want?
What are we asking?
I'm not trying to sort of force anybody to make the decision now, but we will have to answer questions why we've delayed. So if there was a tree came down tonight and someone was injured, we would have to answer a question of why didn't we know there was a problem there, and we can't say that we delayed for X, Y, and Z. I think it would be a good idea to get on to Barry Wilson again, and certainly see what we should be doing, because we definitely should be doing something.
I know we don't know what Brent's cost is, but the fact is we're going to do this survey for free, and then we're saving at least £500 plus £800 straight away. I think there's a lot of sense in getting that initial survey done with him, and even if we're only given the first lot of work as a
Again, sorry.
Well, I think if people know there is ash dieback, surely they should be reported to us so we can report straight to the council, who are very keen to get rid of the ash dieback.
If the property, if you own the tree, if it's a tree on your property, then it's up to you as a landowner, homeowner, to do something about it. But this is public trees. So, for instance, the tree that fell down on Riverside, that could just have easily have been people on the Riverside bank at the time. The tree looks very healthy, and it was windy, but it wasn't particularly stormy when that tree came down. And it's just having somebody with good knowledge to go around it and give us an assessment. Now, if Brent is willing to do a walk around with us, there would be nothing to stop some competent member of the parish council going around with him and compiling their own report. And then if Brent says that tree on that fence post corner needs work on it, we could take a picture of it, send it to Barry Wilson, and ask him to come out and assess it. You know, we're just making an action plan. In which case, you know, we're going to have to do it more than once, you know, every time there's a heavy storm, etc.
That could be a way of doing it. I'm a bit concerned though that if we agree to Brent doing an inspection on condition that he gets the work, if there is work, the council's, you know, hostage to whatever price he wants to give, and I'm not sure we can do that legally. I would have thought if we could get Barry Wilson or somebody he recommends who has the knowledge to do a walk round for free, and then, you know, we're then in a position to say we need to have a proper arboriculturist look at the trees, or we need to take some sort of action. I don't think, you know, we are trying to address the issue.
Brent, for a quote for you doing the assessment, I know you said you do it free, but if we've got a quote from him for doing that assessment, we can then compare that like for like.
But I'm
No,
sure
it's
you
not
get
that, it's the
people to do it for
it's the
nothing.
subsequent work though, isn't it?
Well, no, but if he's charging for that quote, we don't have any obligation to then go for subsequent work. Because he was doing it for free, we felt.
Could we also, I mean, just put that cards on the table and say, we're happy for you to come and do it, we're willing to give you work, but we still have to go out and get 3 quotes before we can give it to you, and obviously if your quote is far exceeding that of others, then we would be, you know, we'd have to be obliged to go with them. And if he understood that, then obviously he's not going to overquote for work or anything, and can give a competitive price for it. I mean, I think if we're honest about it, I mean, I'm fairly certain that they've got the qualifications in that team, and we can ask for certification of that, and then just say that this is the way that we need to play it, and he's still happy to go ahead with that and do a survey for us.
And if he wants to make a charge for that survey, ask him what it is, because he already had quotes. Yes, I think that's fair enough.
Okay.
I think we also need to remember that cost is not necessarily the best.
No.
The cheapest quote's not the best one.
No.
And we have to look at recommendations of these businesses that we employ, and if there are recommendations in the village for work already done, that's been done to a high standard, then that should hold just as much weight as a cheap cost, because good equipment and good professional people cost money.
Yes.
And you want a safe job done in a timely manner.
Also somebody can call back on and say, hey,
well,
this isn't working.
Having the local tree surgeon do it.
Yes.
If there is an issue with a tree falling and storm damage, then you know where to go knock on his door.
Yeah.
You know.
No.
Yeah.
So you happy got if we go to Brent to get a
And ask him and say,
Yes.
you know,
Can we make a presumption then if he says yes, then we proceed?
does that sound, that's what I would like to say. If Brent agrees to do the walk around for free but still submit a quote because he realises he has to go for tender, are we content to go ahead with that?
Well, if he agrees to it, yeah.
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
And it does say in our financial regulations we don't have to accept the lowest.
Yes.
So it's actually.
I think that's a key thing here, because we need high quality, not low price.
Good. I think is all those in favour? Thank you very much. Where were we? Next one. Expenditure to Lisbon, where were these for?
These are for the play park.
The play park. So 2, oh yes, they.
Yes, so the one, there's 2, so at the moment there's 1 in the play park. It is very, it's that old sort of like concrete composite type stuff. It's very chipped and damaged. There's a problem because it's a slide out bin at the base with no base to speak of, and it feels rubbish. So it's to replace that one, but also to put an additional bin at the far end of the play area, where they don't seem to be able to walk to the far end. Now, this is a reasonably expensive quote because it's from Glaston's. I know that Council Felton had looked, and it is possible to find cheaper ones, so we have gone backwards and forwards a little bit about what, you know, it's this question of do you go find the cheapest quotes. I think it's very difficult when we're buying online because you can't really see the quality of what you're getting, and I know that Glaston's been used before by the council. Looking at you, Tony, because I think you've recommended them to me before for things.
I've never recommended them, but they advertise widely.
Yeah.
I've never heard of any criticism.
Exactly, and it seems that they're quite well used. Again, I looked on the park.
Well, whether the value for money is a different matter.
But that's a very difficult question when we're buying offline.
I mean, what would the county council quote you? Will this fly?
They won't quote us now, they say that we have to buy our own, I've asked.
Isn't this what so-and-so's?
Does anybody have any points on this, or?
So, I mean, I can go out and get cheaper ones, but I just like them.
Do we get the parish council discount?
It's not very much.
It's not very much. I mean, I personally didn't think it was an excessive price we paid for TD supported bins, and I thought the alternative that I put forward, they looked cheap, and I didn't think that they were going to last. And I think it needs doing, and I would be personally happy to push it through.
I agree with that.
Okay,
So, will the county council empty these?
Yes.
Will there be a charge? I'm sure.
Yes.
Because I've heard what charging for any extra bins or what.
Well, every time I ask them, we've asked this several times, we've asked them about the cemetery ones and everything as well, and every time I speak to them, they say, no, it's no extra
Well,
charge.
fine.
I've asked them, I've now got an email thread called Bins Again.
If we put 2 in the field, in the playground, does that, is there any allotment there for groundworks? Or is it to be sort of built into the concrete on the ground? Was that included? Or?
Well, I've got the fixing bolts where you still have to put concrete down.
Oh, right, I thought it was included there.
so just the concrete foundation, no, it's just a fixing box
Yeah.
project, yes.
I didn't speak about this with Lindsay because I wasn't really sure what the best fixing solution was when we thought the concrete.
We could easily get
set,
some bags of quick set post fix, form a slab in the ground when that's set, ready to take the.
Because the other options are doing sort of a paving slab base and you can get bolts for that and things, but we thought the concrete ones would be the most efficient.
I was going to say a couple of good strong paving slabs would probably do the job.
I guess if you drill them, it might be difficult. You may break them when you drill them.
Okay, do we have,
Are you happy with that as a?
so to approve the expenditure for these 2 bins then, and then we'll look at the second fixing. Thank you very much. To consider and approve the draft budget as prepared by the Finance Committee, hopefully we'll read down on page 14 to 16. Did anybody have any comments on this?
Can I just, what I would like to draw your attention to is the cemetery parish contribution. Now, we had put that up on the idea that, obviously we talked about possible dissolution of the cemetery joint committee and whether that would increase costs. When we were discussing the budget, the finance committee thought it could be sensible to put additional funds into the cemetery that could then, if they don't get spent, they could be used for next year's allocation.
Chair, rather than increasing the as much, why don't we use some of the reserves from the cemetery funds, which are available, could be available?
Well, it would be our share of it. Because if we did go ahead with dissolving the joint committee, all those reserves will be split 3 ways.
Well, they shouldn't be.
Well, it depends where they came from.
Well, they came from the cemetery.
But it would be one of the questions that we would have to work out as part of dissolving the cemetery, that whether any of those funds are held for the other 2 parish councils.
The reserves, I was understood were cemetery,
Okay.
you know.
So yeah, I mean, there's options. I mean, we don't have to leave that, especially if the other 2 parish councils see
I was thinking, because we're going to increase the precept quite a bit, it wouldn't make the precept look so bad if you dropped that figure by $2 grand.
And we're only going up, we're not going up, this year, we're going up 2 or 3, aren't we? 3,000. 3,500. Yeah. So yeah, that's something that can come down
Yeah.
if you wanted to.
Especially as we're only producing a report, it's not, we don't even know if it's going to go ahead yet, so I have to take that down to, I still think we need to increase it because there's less burials, just generally at the moment, and you think that might continue with the current restrictions, etc. So how, what do you increase it by 3.5?
We put it up to 3.5, but it's normally only like what we put it up to 2,000 basically. I don't think we need to put it up very much if we're not including it, if we're not making provision for.
So instead of going up, so if we add 500 onto it for the,
That's more reasonable.
instead of the, I think it's like 2.5. Does that sound reasonable to everybody? Do we have any objections to that? So we'll make that 500 increase and make it 1850, would it?
Yeah.
Any other? Do you have any other reasons to?
I don't think so, it was just that one to explain why that was so high.
Yeah.
Sorry, there is a few other things on there actually that are new. We've had a request from the working groups that could we put in some money towards the Oval and South Lane South View improvements. So we've put £2,000 into maybe £2,000 provision for those.
Part of that is we almost certainly will be asked to make a contribution, so we need to start putting money aside now towards that contribution, if people are happy with that.
And
For
then,
NCC works, for highways works.
Yes.
Do we still need to pay for Zoom?
I was thinking, yeah, I was going to ask that. I don't think, we haven't really been using it now, I think that could probably come out.
Because it's the sort of thing we can take back if we need to.
Yeah.
And I think people are, we kept it because we weren't sure when people would feel comfortable, but actually I think people are finding it, yeah.
Well,
We weren't sure whether we don't have many working groups now that need it, all the rest of the committees which have to meet in person, so, yes.
there is still moves afoot for either hybrid meetings or
But
as
until,
John said,
meetings.
we can start it again.
Start
Yes,
again.
that's what I was going to say, yes.
Yeah.
Why not?
And then,
So we'll take that out.
yeah, and then increased the rec field provision to £4,000, just knowing that we've got, you know, quite a few plans for the updating the maintenance and so on. So it's to give us a bit of leeway with those. The play area, we've put in, normally we would only put in about 1,500 in the play area fund, but we've put it up to 6, because again, we're hoping to do the redesign of the play area, and again, it's one of these things where if we're applying for grants, we will be expected to have some funds to contribute. I think that's all of the ones that were unusual.
Do you have any other comments, any questions? Okay, can I have a show of hands to approve the...
And just let you know, so that would be, so yeah, that would take us, so with the changes which are reducing the cemetery contribution down to 1850 and then removing Zoom, that will take us to a preset requirement of 32812, 32,812, which is slightly higher than last year. It's about 1,800 higher than last year. And the advice for coming through
Well,
from now.
as I said, I mean, I know I've talked about it, but the advice is to
gradually increase.
gradually increase, because it is forecast in the next possibly 5 years.
It'll be capped.
Yes,
So that you won't be able to do it, and then definitely
Because-
helps out with that.
Yes.
there is more funds in parish councils than there is in the government. Virtually.
Okay, can I have a show of hands with the new figures then to approve that draft budget? All those in favour? Thank you very much. Anybody against?
So on that basis, I'll submit that as a preset requirement of 32,812.
The last item, item H, unfortunately, the member of the committee that was doing our reconciliations, can't do this. It's not correct, but I did do the last reconciliation, so there was one done, but I did make a comment on the reconciliation sheet to say that I'd done it in extremis because we'd lost our committee member, and I thought it's better to have something done. What I'd like is to have a volunteer to do it, and if they could then go back and recheck my reconciliation, because that would keep it accurate, but I felt it.
Was it a hard job, Greg?
No.
There you go.
It's 15, 20 minutes. Wasn't difficult at all. It's monthly. So it can't be myself, and it can't be a check signatory, which is myself, Lindsay, and Tony. So if you have another volunteer, anybody would.
I'll do it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Is everybody happy?
It's not. Yeah. So all those in favour of Anne taking on the reconciliation? Thank you. Thank you. It is difficult.
It's not a big job.
We'll just pass them up.
Policy and procedure. To consider and adopt the biodiversity and climate change policy recommended by the Climate Change Committee. It was in the minutes. You may have noticed you've all been given a new copy of this here. The bit highlighted in yellow is the only change. Ignore the bit highlighted in yellow in the back. That was actually in the original one. You can just need to go and find it onto the next page. So it's just that first paragraph there that wasn't included in the original biodiversity policy that you were sent out. So does anybody have any comments on that policy? Do you want to make any?
I'd be happy to introduce it. Because I was with your Commission Chairman and Councillors. I think with World Leaders and Campaigners meeting in Glasgow this very day to address the global climate emergency, it would be hard to imagine a more appropriate day for this Parish Council to adopt a clear and specific policy to shape our commitment to action to reduce our climate impact and enhance and conserve biodiversity in our parish and its neighbourhood. And the clear message already emerging from COP26, even before the first day, is that commitment to carbon reduction and climate impact mitigation is not enough. The world, and especially the children and young people of our world, are demanding action now. So this policy is intended just to provide a framework for the Parish Council's support for change and positive action to safeguard and improve biodiversity within the parish and neighbourhood, and to steer and encourage action by the Parish Council, householders, farmers, businesses, Felton School and other local institutions to mitigate climate impact in line with our own climate emergency declaration. We are faced with an existential emergency that will affect Felton as well as the Marshall Islands in the Pacific, and it will take the best efforts of all of us to mobilise our community to want change and to make it happen. Tony Clayton from Felton Can, who I'm sure you all know, has offered quite a lot of valuable input, and so has Rob Murphy. Tony would have been here, but he's got a bad cold, I'm told, and nobody else from Can could come, but he did write to me and say Felton Can wishes to offer its strong support for the work of the Biodiversity and Climate Change Committee and congratulates the Parish Council on its formation. It's most encouraging that there are now 2 community organisations in Felton that have the climate and ecological crisis as their concern, and it is our hope that we will work closely together, offering support for each other's projects where appropriate, whilst avoiding duplication of effort. The future we face will be challenging, and we would like to think that Felton can become a role model for villages in Northumberland. There is much work to do. So, as they say in the House of Parliament, I commend this policy to the House. And any questions?
Yes.
Yes, Chair.
I'm quite happy with the fundamental principles.
Yes.
Completely. However, this particular document, what does produce a but for me is that the council will, 19 times, the council, we're told the council will do this, the council will do that, 19 times, and there's no reference to the committee doing anything.
Oh, well, that's because the council's the executive. We will.
I would.
We have the terms of reference.
Also, we have, you refer to the business plan.
So on several instances. First page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, small paragraph. These are all key objectives in the council's business plan.
Oh, yes.
And then on the back page, something similar.
That's
Repeat, these are all key objectives in the council's business plan.
that's been crossed out at the same time.
So I wonder with some of the origins of this. It seems to me a bit of a sledgehammer to crack a nut for this parish council. That's all. The principles and objectives, yes, we need to do as you say, but it's I would suggest this is reviewed after 6 months.
Thank you, Chair, yes. Just picking up one or two small points here. They talk about light pollution resulting from street lighting, etc. Chair, street lighting is important for safety and security. Then I think it shouldn't be included in this issue. Because the council a few years ago, when they put the new street lights in, were going to switch off alternate lights after midnight. And there was an absolute furor in certain areas of the country. So it was forgotten. And the thing is, to change the wiring so that it turns somebody off and somebody on, costs an absolute fortune. Would probably cost more than what we're going to save.
As well as environmental, one of the things the council has to consider is crime and crime reduction. So, like you say, if we are considering turning lights off, that would affect that.
We do actually dim them at midnight anyway.
Yes.
Do we do?
They're already.
I wasn't finished yet, Chair, sorry.
The one outside.
Sorry, because
So, also, it refers to land drainage systems. Well, the land drainage systems don't need planning applications. So we don't know when farmers are putting new land drainage systems in. So how can we have any input, how can anybody have any input on that? I mean, a farmer can go and drain a field at any time at all. We don't know about it. It's up to the farmer. So it's one of those things. And the only concern I've got about sustainable procurement and use of products, I quite wish I support. The thing is, what you've got to remember is, if you want environmentally friendly products, you've got to pay something 2 or 3 times as much as what a slightly cheaper product would be to do the same job.
that's why we don't have to go for the cheapest option.
I was just going to say on, drainage on, if it was probably sand or streetlights and on ply and stuff to reuse in the future. It's called a climate emergency because it affects the whole world, and actually it's not going to be a cheap fix, and we'll have to be prepared that this group is hopefully going to cost the parish council quite a bit of money making things right in this village, because there's a lot of work to do, and we want to be supporting the group and taking on board their recommendations, and certainly the group I feel should be willing to go and speak to farmers about land drainage and what happens to, or even homeowners, what happens to the fresh water in their garden, and try and consult the local population of the village to try and make green choices, because we're only here for a short time, but we're leaving the road for somebody else. And I think this document here outlines a few things that they're looking forward to doing, and and it's good. And if you look on studies made by other groups, the climate change problem is going to be an expensive one. It's going to be a big fix, and it's going to take a long time. And I think we need to agree to get moving. And I'd be happy to accept this on the basis that the odd word or punctuation mark can be negotiated. I just think we need to get started.
Well, I think Dr. Chair, provided a 6 monthly review, we can see we adopt it and then at 6 months.
But I think
we'll have to see how it's going and what we want to change and we'll put that up for review then. Any other points for? So the proposal is that we adopt the biodiversity policy document that's put before us with the caveat that it will be reviewed in 6 months' time. So all those in favour? Thank you. Rampant Riverside.
I was just going to say, if you listen to the news tonight, Greta Thunberg had said that she wasn't going to go into the conference because the only way to get anything done is to talk to the people outside, because the people will move rather than the government. And I thought that was an excellent statement from a young girl.
I was going to respond to Councillor Souter's challenge that the committee hasn't given itself anything to do. And actually what Councillor Eileen has said is absolutely true. I did say this. We have to make the community want to change, because we will not be able to do it ourselves. The committee, the executive is the Parish Council, but ultimately we have to get people interested and willing to make changes. So thank you all for your comments, which
I missed one.
are appreciated.
9, the climate change emergency report. Does that basically what you read out, does that cover yours?
No.
Well,
no. Or do you want to?
It's not the first meeting, don't you?
yes. We declared a climate emergency at the last meeting, and by doing so acknowledged that the council needs to act on the causes and impacts of climate change. The committee, your new committee, met informally about 10 days ago and is very keen to publicise the policy and the intentions within the community and to establish links with interested organisations and individuals who want to support the work of the Parish Council. And our initial response to the Council's declaration is to propose that we ask the Clerk to arrange a proper committee meeting open to the press and public soon after the close of the COP26 conference. Well, it's fresh in people's minds that we've got a job to do. And we suggested 4 areas initially, which is to publicly launch the policy and the climate emergency declaration, because unless people go and read the minutes on the notice board, and it's a very titchy little minute, they might not have noticed, but it's, it's something that people will be aware of from watching television and listening to the news. Secondly, to acknowledge that there are actors and organisations working in our community who share these aims, so we need to establish links with them. To consider and prioritise actions to mitigate in the first place the climate emergency, which is going to be quite difficult, but we need to start somewhere, and that will be part of that initial consultation. And we also think we should be looking to co-opt people who have relevant expertise and executive ability, who can get things done, onto the committee, and we're allowed to do that under the terms of reference that you've approved. So that's basically the first thing we need to do.
Don't think it was you
No, just an update,
yeah, so it's just an update. Thank you very much for that. Then do you have any points of comment before we move on? Thank you. 10, the Rampant Riverside. Thank you, John, for putting the gate up. And as you're aware, a tree fell down and did cause some damage to it, and just because of the state of it. Would you like to give updates from the management?
I think we left it that we're going to make a plan on the repair for the ramp. and also look at what can be saved, what can be modified to make it work better for the future. I have asked for a carpenter to come and so to be his professional opinion of what can be done in place, because I'm aware that SSI people want to know, you know, what we're going to do, what equipment we're going to need to use, what machinery we're going to need to use, and move forward there. I'm yet to get a date off them to do that, but I'm working on a few ideas which I want to get back to you about. So I'm sort of left it there for now.
So it's still waiting. So unfortunately, it's going to remain closed for the time being until we address that.
Sorry, just to go back over that. If you think there's a necessity to repair what's there, having a look at the damaged handrail, it could be fixed.
I think we agreed
Pulling the plaster off again, isn't it?
property management one that we're just throwing good money off the back. We want
Well,
to.
we did agree with that, Chair, I quite agree with you.
Yeah, I think that's what we agreed, so we'll wait out for that.
But when you say, it's the treads,
Yeah.
people could trip on the treads.
Yes.
You repair the handrails, and the treads could just...
Very good. So item 11, Felton surgery. We still haven't heard back from the.
I haven't heard back from any of the emails I sent.
Right.
It's bizarre, particularly to new councillors, that when we joined the council in May, we were plunged into a vortex
Yeah.
of meetings about Felton surgery, and now there's total silence.
Yes.
Does anybody know what's going on?
No, this is what I'm saying, we're waiting for email. And what is more annoying is that the resident recently went for an appointment at Wimbledon and was told by the nurse that, oh, we're waiting for the council, it's all with the council. Well, it's not with us, they have put us, the doctors have told the Shura to put a stop to it, so it's the doctors that have done that. And we've asked the question why and what is going on.
Right.
We're still progressing, from our side we're still progressing, so it
And
does
the
not
next
rest
big
with us.
review meeting is not until the 24th, wouldn't like that. When we may or may not get an answer to that.
Okay.
So,
Do we have an update on the land transfer?
that was written,
Where have we got?
have you sent that email to say if we want to take it out, or?
Yes, I'll need to form it up now.
Yes. So the only thing we've done is, as you're aware, there was an email that came that included the path.
Yeah.
Well, obviously the council don't want to be responsible for that path if we can help it. So we've sent an email to say, can they come out and peg out the land so we can see exactly, and hopefully they've just included that path by mistake, because we don't really want to say. That should be adopted by
Council.
Yes, by county.
That's what I'm saying, that's what I was invited to Claire to say to contact the footpaths officer.
Yes. But no, we're still waiting. So we just chase up that email.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman,
sorry,
you asking Bellway for confirmation of the land that was sectioned off, as in the land was, Bellway land was being looked after and the doctor's surgery wasn't, and it was a.
Yes.
Have you had confirmation from Bellway?
Yes, we've had confirmation from Bellway that we are getting the whole area, but like I say, unfortunately it includes a very little bit of footpath that goes down to the road.
To the new road?
Yes, which, like I say, we don't think we should be responsible for the footpath.
No.
So,
Right,
but we are getting the whole area. That has been copied into trust management, and I've asked trust management to get in touch with the residents to say what are they going to do about possibly leaving, because they've been paying for work that should have been doing.
Because it's not just the footpath, it's the verge
Yes.
on the right-hand side footpath going north,
Yeah.
which shouldn't be our responsibility.
Yeah. So that's why we just want that pegged out.
Peg it out.
Definitely.
And if anything, that bit of verge could then go to trust management to make up for the bit of land they've been, because they need a certain amount of land to make it worth their while. So,
Mr. Chairman, is it possible for members of the public to have a copy of the said area so that it can be referenced against what's been talked about in the past? Of course, you're discussing it. I don't have a visual.
can we put a picture on the minutes, or can we?
I'll see how I can, if not, I'll put it on the website. I'll send you a copy maybe. Thank you.
Put it on the website. Thank you very much. 12, report from County Council. Did you get anything this time in the letter or anything, Tony?
What?
Did you get a letter from Council Thorne this time at all? Because I've not received anything. So item 12.
The only thing, I was at the Malcolm John, which was very informative as far as all the training that's going on in the county. And since they've started doing the training virtually, there's a 75% increase in participation.
Yeah.
Because people don't have to travel.
Yeah.
And the chief officer hasn't to travel either.
But
so it saves money and saves everything.
That's part of 13. Just for 12, have you received anything from Councillor Thorne himself?
Oh, 13. No, I haven't received anything from Pella this time. No, sorry.
And I haven't, so we'll take that as a nothing. So 13, yes, you've attended the
Yes, sorry.
meeting. Anything else to add on that? Or?
There was nothing, any major thing. The thing is, the guest speaker who was they had lined up couldn't come at last minute. And we got a talk by David Francis and Stephen Rickett on the history of the association, which is 75 years old this year. And we started during the war by a gentleman called, during the last war, by a gentleman called Michael Martindale, and he went on, and David Francis followed a chap called Alec Trotter, and it was very interesting. But what did come out of that was, years ago, the local authority was the church, the parochial church council. They controlled everything. The vicar was the big man in the village. And it started to change in 1894. And what caused the change was they wanted to start and rate agricultural land. Because they wanted to rate agricultural land, the church, they said, no. And this is where a lot happened and changed. But an interesting fact was the first Citizens Advice Bureau in this area was in Berwick, many, many years ago. And the only disappointing part was the survey, which you all got on the spot figure. There was only 304 responses, which was very, very disappointing. And the other thing is
I hope a lot of you do at the time. Thank you for that. Any other? So could we have the finance committee met between each year and the year?
I wasn't representing the parish, but I and John both logged into the Countryside Charity CPRE webinar for 2.5 hours or so this afternoon, looking at the quality of new housing development, and particularly focusing on rural Northumbria. And it was very impressive. They had a very, very good lineup of speakers, including Rob Murphy, who doesn't live in the village but lives on the other side of the river. So he's as good as. But it was very interesting, and you know, I wish I had been on the council and around when Bellway were putting in their planning application. Because there's so much that hasn't happened there that is now accepted as really necessary for good quality housing, for developing a sense of place, and so on. It's really, really interesting and really challenging. And I think the one comment that, most important comment I took away was that neighbourhood plans will have a serious impact on planning in the future. So the national, whatever it's called, national planning document becomes subservient to neighbourhood plans as long as they're established, but they need to be quite well done and quite specific. But that's the area where you can say you want a good community and a good place for people to live, and a good expansion of your community, and make sure that the planners can't override that. So it was, I think it was worth testing, wasn't it?
It was very good.
Any other representations?
Yeah, the rec committee.
formed a working group,
Right,
discussed bins.
yes.
Also, me and Councillor Dixon have been around the local play parks, taking photos and, taking over what's what. And the new cycle park that's been built at Rossbury, which is fantastic. And spoke to the lad who's formed it and actually said he would come and give a little talk if we wanted it, or asked. If he'd come to the meeting.
Okay.
It's quite impressed. Really impressed.
I can't remember if the property management went between those, I think it was before the war.
Yeah, before.
Anything else?
Just to mention the incident at the rec today, we've had kids on top of the blue containers
Yes.
using the goalposts as gym equipment. They're probably going to put a load of rubbish through my back gate now because I've took them off and then John went down there and got them off. But just to be vigilant. I don't really know what we can do if we can do anything apart from getting something else to play on. As quickly as possible.
Possibly meeting though, but we're in for meetings. Item 14, standing item report from the Northumbria Police. I've had an email from Katie today. Four crimes reported in the Felton area for October. The first related to the taking of a motor vehicle without consent, which occurred on the 17th of 10, and no offender took a motor vehicle without consent and later collided with a parked vehicle, actually on the Thurston side. The offender fully admitted the offence in the interview. The three other crimes are still under current investigation, so unable to comment at this time. There have been no incidents reported which would raise concern to residents. I believe that the vehicle was taken, although it was taken without consent, it was their friend's car that took. So.
It wasn't a break.
No longer a
It
friend.
wasn't a break-in, it wasn't, but the friend didn't give them permission to take it. So that's it.
Sounds like a crime wave compared to the usual.
Brett, has there been anything about the plane? Is there any more correspondence?
No, nothing. That'll take a while before we get anything on the report. I'll check the website again. I've not seen anything. 15. Correspondence received. Have you all had a look at the last page of correspondence received? Any comments on that from anybody? No? 16 items for next agenda. Has anybody got anything you want added at this time? Just a reminder, you can email the clerk before the Friday.
You can just email me at any point of the month and I'll put them in a folder and I'll dig them out when it's on the agenda.
Finance Committee terms of reference will need updating.
Can I ask a question? Do the committees do their own updating? Or does this sort of either?
Either, I think if the committee has something that it wants to be changed in it, they could put it forward, otherwise we'll just review them on a sort of annual basis.
Item 17, recreation lane
But
access.
this is, I wasn't sure we needed to close the meeting or not, so. It was in case you wanted them to be, so that we could leave at the end, that's why I put it at the end.
What's your opinion? It's just the legal. I mean, you'd love to close it, but do they need to leave?
I think they should leave it if it's.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, am I hearing correctly about closing the meeting?
Sorry?
Am I
No.
hearing?
Not closing, sorry, to close it to the public, but we're not doing that.
Oh, right, because it's not on the agenda.
And again, it doesn't have to be on the agenda if we feel that it is, we're going to discuss something. In accordance with our standing orders, it doesn't have to be on the agenda.
Oh, you could have done that, thank you. You could have told me that earlier when I was scribbling the audit.
Oh, sorry. I thought you'd spotted it.
So it's Lindsay and Richard.
Yeah, I know Richard's one of the last indicated, but no, it's not.
You think it's a fixture?
Yes.
Exactly.
So could I ask Councillor Sargent and Councillor Evans to leave the meeting? The date of the next meeting is going to be the 6th of December. I don't think there's any need for you to come back if you, because yours is the last item.
Six.
Sorry? Johnson, no, because, yeah, 6th of December.
Different agreement.
I don't think.
No.
Assume you won't want us back.
No, that's why I said the next meeting, so quite a few to leave if you want.
Good luck.
I do have this in there, that's a lot.
So this was to agree the documents circulated separately, formalising access to properties on Recreation Lane, and to agree the next steps.
No.
Sorry, yeah. No, we just,
Did I not send them round with you?
well, that's what I was going to say. I don't think we did, so I
We
can't.
I did, I sent them round with email.
They came out with a changed agenda.
Oh, with the change agenda.
I'm sure they came out with
I definitely sent, I mean, if
So let's come out with a change agenda.
We've not got that.
she doesn't get any of my email, she needs to, I think you need to add me to your
Yeah, I
email.
know, I do.
I'll send them.
Check, because I've got the change agenda.
I guess I think it's in part of the conversation, but not if it's a direct email.
She doesn't like me.
Because I don't like when it goes via email, I just want you to communicate with me via message.
Things are a lot.
But the thing is when you relate to them, it just relies on the last person that like commented.
Who has-
Yeah, but it's
who has seen this
conversation, I
document?
think I was trying to show you.
Right. In that case,
I'm happy to talk about it.
well, I think we really see them, and by this time, because what we haven't done, we haven't got Council Evans sorted out anyway. So what we can do is put them all together as one document.
Put another meeting in.
Yeah.
Chair,
Or can that be at the next one?
Yeah, we could.
is the bank on the corner a different thing? Because they obviously need access to their garage.
Yes, Chair, I just realised what you said now. Yes, I quite agree.
No, here, the one we only need an email, 22nd of October.
On the original one?
Yeah.
Because they've got it.
That's what I was thinking, we're giving it to the reading rooms and the people next door
22nd of October.
who access round to that little car parking bit.
They've already got access
Bank already have access.
to the garage.
Oh, I'm not sure.
They've got access, the garage,
No, they've got access to the house.
so the garage on the, is the garage on the other side?
Yes.
No, I don't know.
The garage on the other side is similar to the access to English Jones and the official access to Lindsay.
What number are they?
Which one?
34, the bank?
The bank is new, it's
There's a jump, isn't there?
I think it's 36.
22, 24, 26, 28, 32, 36. It's or one recreation lane.
Depending on which window you look out.
That's right, Anne. Actually, it's one. The entrance on Main Street's closed up now, so it is just one recreation lane. When I went through, I read them all, and I thought,
You discuss
didn't dawn on me, I sat here tonight, couldn't we then, you mentioned it from the beginning.
I just thought we covered all the properties, but we haven't done all of them.
Well, I know Mr. Dodds is sunk, I saw that years ago.
And I know they've got access to their front door.
True.
Okay, I apologise, it looks like not at hand at the moment. So what the intention is to put this onto the next meeting and we'll make sure those are circulated, people have got time to read them properly. Basically, it's to agree that,
Agree the version, final version, those final versions of the deeds.
yes. And hopefully we can include Richard in that. Yeah. So with that, date of next meeting is the 6th of December, so 21:01, meeting is closed.